You are listening to Claret Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Claret Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. And this week we're joined by Ray Houghton, Republic of Ireland legend from Villa back in the 90s. How you doing, Ray?
Yeah, very well, thanks, Ash.
A big signing back in the 90s when you moved to Villa, and just talk about your career and how the move came about. Oh, Big Ron signed you, didn't he? But yeah, we'll start with life back in Castlemilk, back in Glasgow, back at home. What was life growing up there?
It was a working man's area, Castlemilk. No pubs, pubs in the area. And lots of fields where you could go and play football. And it didn't matter if you were 5 or 75, you could get a game. So you learnt very quickly in 50 a side how to get out of the way of the older players because they would kick you. Unlike today's football, where you start screaming as you go over, back then, you couldn't show that you had been hurt in a challenge. And the other thing I thought I learned a great deal about it was how to get space on a pitch. Because when there's so many people in and around you, you got to find gaps in areas where you can go to get on the ball. But funny enough, I was talking to an old colleague of mine, Liam Brady, and I was talking about modern, youngsters compared to when we done training, because we didn't have coaches, there was nowhere for us to go. And he said it was just a dedication, going up, getting a ball, hitting it against the wall, trying to keep it up with your right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. If you done 2 lefts, you stopped. You done 2 rights, you stopped. And you had that discipline and that dedication, and you would do it for hour after hour after hour because there was nothing else to do. The TV wasn't very good, and you didn't have many games to play with. So that's what we done as youngsters to improve yourself as players. Whereas today, there's so much more for the kids, which is great. I've got grandchildren, and I see that firsthand. But I just think, like we us, you went to school, you came back from school, you done your homework, you were out, you came back for your dinner, you went back out, and then you came back in when it was time to go to bed, and that was your routine, if you like. But that's where the dedication and the discipline came from.
So what was home life like? I mean, what did your man do? Your man was Irish, wasn't he? What was your man's name?
My mum didn't work in Scotland. She did when we came to England. She used to do cleaning work in a pub not far away from where we lived. My dad was in and out of work, to be honest, and that was one of the reasons we came to London. I had 2 older brothers, John and Ken, who John had just started as a motor mechanic, or he had been at it for about a year and a half, because back then you could leave school at 15. So he was about 17. Ken had just finished secondary school, and he was going to become a carpenter, but there was no work in Scotland, and that was the reason why the family left and came to London. And my dad came down here, and he was fixed machines. So that was his job, really, but that was very much on and off. So yeah, as I say, it was tough from that point of view, but great growing up. 2 older brothers that looked after you, and I've got a younger sister, and that was my job to look after her.
That's it, yeah. What was the move to London like? I think he was only 10 at the time, but a bit of a culture shock. All the cars.
Well, my mum and my dad and my sister came down first. They came and stayed with my auntie who lived in Camden Town. So my 2 brothers and I got on the bus. There used to be a coach who went out to Glasgow to London, Victoria, and I think he went about 10 o'clock at night. I want to say round about that. And all my brother's mates came to wish him farewell, goodbye. It was like we were leaving and never coming back again. It was only Glasgow to London, if you like. But I'd never been out to Scotland before. I'd never been anywhere else but Scotland. So the first time I crossed the border into Carlisle, we stopped off. The bus stopped off to, for a rest, to go to the restrooms and have something to eat. The first time I've ever spoke to an English person, really. And it was a culture shock, getting back on the bus, arriving down at London Victoria the next morning, trying to make our way from there to Camden Town, where, remember, there's no mobile phones. There's nothing to tell you how to get there. You have to ring up your auntie and, speak to your mum and dad and say, how'd you get there? And then they don't really know because they've only been in London a short time. So it was all new. And when you're 10, nearly 11, it's an adventure. It was an adventure for me. I was sad to leave Glasgow because you know, I had so many good friends, and the school team were in the quarterfinals of the cup, and the parents were asking my parents if they could pay for the fare for me to come back to play in the semi-final, because I was probably their best. Yeah, well, I was their best player at the time. I mean, I used to score for fun. I was a centre forward back then. I used to score 4s and 5s and 6s in games back in the day. So it was an adventure. You know, it was something that the family needed to do, because we were going nowhere. And funny enough, we were the first family to come down here as such. And the amount of my brother's mates that came down over the next 5-6 years was incredible. Virtually everyone was leaving because of the you know, work and trying to come down to make a life down in London.
I mean, how did the West Ham Academy move take off then? How did you go about joining them? They spot you in the park?
Well, I played for a district in London called Islington Boys, and so all the schools in Islington, they picked the best team. So from the age of 11, I played for Islington Boys, and part of the deal when you were 11 was they had an affiliation with Arsenal. So you used to go to Arsenal's training. Well, it was actually Arsenal's ground, and they had a big gym at the back, and you would join in with the scholars, you know, with the young players that they had coming through. So on a Tuesday or a Thursday night, there would be so many going on a Tuesday, so many going on a Thursday, and that was part of the deal. So I was at Arsenal as a kid till I was about 14, I want to say, but I didn't grow. I was very small for my age. I mean, the players that I played with who were in my district team would be Chrissy Ramsey, who represented Brighton in the FA Cup final, and Chrissy White, who played for Arsenal and Leeds. And we actually had an even better player, a lad called Paul Brandon. Paul was the Arsenal under 17-18 captain. He broke his leg, and he broke it again whilst he was home, and he never played. And he was probably the best player of all of us at that particular time. So from not being big enough, I left, just played with my mates. And then I got to about 16, I started to grow a little bit. And the sports teacher at my school had an in, if you like, with QPR. And he got me a trial there for a week, which was awful, really. I mean, you know, we used to play 30 minutes, and it was like I was like the discarded one. Like, son, you just play the last 30 minutes. You know what I mean? Everyone else was getting 30 minutes to show what they can do, and I was getting just one, and it was tough. So I was 16, and then you think that's it. So I went to work. At my mate's sister worked for a big company called Justerini and Brooks. It was International Distillers and Vintners, and part of my job was to send J&B whiskey to America, and I did that for about 6 months. Absolutely hated it. Couldn't get on with it at all. I mean, it was fairly easy. I mean, it wasn't a tough job to do. You just had to do the bills of lading, make sure the ship had the containers, the right container on it, was going to the right place over in America or South America, wherever, Canada, wherever it was going over there. So it was fairly easy. And then a scout called Bruce McClellan, his nickname was Mac. He seen my mate Dennis Phillips, who Dennis and I played school football together, played district football together, and he couldn't believe how good Dennis was at 16 and didn't have a club. So he got him a trial at West Ham, and Dennis got on. And Mac just said to Dennis, out of, I don't know, desperation or whatever it was, just said, "Is anyone else like you? You know what I mean? Is there anyone else we're missing out on?" And Dennis said, "Yeah, there's a lad called Ray Houghton." So Mac came to my house without ever seeing me kick a ball and signed me up in schoolboy forms for West Ham. So I went down there, and I think I was doing it for about 9 months. And then I got an offer of a 1-year deal from John Lyle when I was 17. So I couldn't be an apprentice. I had to come in straight in as a pro, although I had to do all the apprentice work.
Onto Fulham, pretty decent Fulham side under Malcolm McDonald, wasn't it? And
yeah, I mean,
that's how you established yourself.
Yeah, I was gutted I left West Ham though, because my last season, and it was my 3rd year, if you like. First year, it's all new, and you're still growing, you're still filling out a little bit. And I done okay. 2nd year, it was a bit hit and miss, still wasn't quite right. But my 3rd year, I was on fire. I mean, I scored 19 goals in the reserves. Every week I was virtually getting man of the match. I'm thinking, why am I not getting into the first team? And a lot of the older, players like Billy Bonds and David Cross and that, they were saying, "Oh, you're doing really well. Keep it up, keep it up, keep it up." And then I had to go in on I think it was the last Thursday of April or May when you get brought in, and they're going to tell you what you're going to do for the following year. So I was the first one in to go and see John Lyall. So there was John Lyall and the two coaches, Mick McGivern and Ronnie Boyce, and they're the ones that make the decision on you. So I came in, and as I was walking in, there was about 10 of us in the waiting room waiting to go and see what was happening. And they said, "Don't take all the money." So I'm going in there, and I'm going to ask for X, Y, and Z. I'm going to ask for a goal bonus. I'm going to ask for this. And when I got in there and sat down, the first words from John Lyall was, "We think you're a good player, but we're going to let you go." Well, after that, he may as well have been speaking different language to me, because nothing was computing. It was just like, I was going, in my head, I'm going, what? Wow. What? I couldn't believe it. Came out afterwards, and as I walked out, all the lads went, "Oh, great." And I went, I've been released. And they went, "What? If you've been released, what's the point of us going in? Because you've been the standout player." And then I had to go into get, you used to call it a pink form. So when you were getting released from the club, you get a pink form from your PFA rep. And then that would be sent around to all the different clubs to let everyone know that you're being released. And David Cross was my, PFA rep. So he would come in, and he was a funny lad. And he'd go, "Right, all you lot, how many of you need the pink form?" So, lads are putting their hands up. And I said, "Yeah, can I have one, David?" And he went to me, "Yeah, okay, yeah. Right, this is serious." He said, "These lads, it's their careers on the lines, blah, blah, blah. Don't mess around." I said, No, I need one. He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "I got released yesterday." And he said, "Nah, no chance." And I think 3 or 4 of the players went to see John Lyall and said, "Look, I think you're making a mistake letting them go." And John had Alan Dickens coming through and 1 or 2 others. So I think he thought he was enough there and decided to let me go. But that's a massive letdown. When that happens to you as a youngster, nothing prepares you for it. You think you've done everything right, you've trained well, you've played well, and for some unknown reason, the manager doesn't fancy you. And, for a lot of players, that's your career over. It actually made me really determined to do even better. And then, the panic of, does anyone like you? Does anyone, fancy you, bringing them to your club, to their club? And then I had about 4 offers. Had Reading came in, Millwall came in, tentative about Luton. I didn't hear anything from David Pleat, who was in charge. And then Malcolm McDonald came in. So I went to meet Malcolm at the Cottage, and delighted to say.
You had a decent side as well, didn't you? And
yeah.
That's where you established yourself there. 3 years
my first season, we should have got promoted. I mean, we were by far one of the best 3 teams in the league. And Leicester picked us. Leicester come with an unbelievable, a good run. We were awful. We had a chairman called Ernie Clay, and Ernie wanted to do it on the cheap. And he didn't buy a player. I mean, I came as a free transfer, and there was just a load of kids coming through. So we had like Paul Parker, Jeff Hopkins, Cliffy Carr, Peter Scott. There was a load of youngsters, Dean Coney, coming through, who didn't cost them anything, and they're all in, getting to the first team or close to the first team. So he thought he would have enough there. And the last game of the season, we played Derby away, where we needed to win to give ourselves a chance, and we ended up losing it. Derby needed to get something to stay up, and that is, without a doubt, the toughest game I've played in for atmosphere. The Derby fans were crackers. I mean, the pitch was 60-40 in the end, because they were all coming on. You couldn't even see the touch lines, or you couldn't see if the ball was going out or not, because they were all on the sidelines.
Is that the baseball ground?
Yeah, the old baseball ground. And the referee, he bottled it. He didn't know what to do, to be honest, because Malcolm McDonald was saying, "Look, how can you play?" We had a corner, and one of their players came on and tackled one of our players. One of their fans came on and tackled one of our boys. And after the game, we ran off, and they ripped all our shirts to shreds and everything. It just wouldn't have happened. And this is one of the great things about football today. It wouldn't have happened. The police would have had you off, and and the ground probably would have been empty. The Derby fans wouldn't have been able to get away with what they did. You know what I mean?
The big move to Liverpool with Dalglish, 2 FA Cups, a Charity Shield, 2 titles as well, of course, and 5 successful years at Liverpool. And then just fast forwarding to 92, how did the Villa move come about? I mean, Chelsea were very keen, weren't they?
Yeah, I mean, Graham Souness became manager, and my first full season, he came, just near the end of one, and then we had a full season, and I'd done really well. I was I think I was Player of the Year. I got into the top 6 for the PFA Player of the Year. I went to see him about an extension to my contract because I had a year left, and he didn't want to give me the money that the others were on. So, I said to him, I've been your best player. You keep telling me I've been your best player, but you're not giving me the money to match it. And I think his argument was, well, I didn't buy you. It was a silly argument. But anyway, I said, well, I'll move on then. I said I want to get closer to London, which was just an excuse to get away. And then the 2 teams that came in were Chelsea and Aston Villa. Ian Porterfield was the manager at Chelsea. Actually, they offered me a better deal, a longer deal. But I went and spoke to them. Didn't really fancy it. I must admit, hand on heart, I didn't really, even though I'd be back in London, it didn't feel right. I spoke to Big Ron, and what Ron can be like. He became very engaging and make you feel like you're $1 million, every day in training. So he sold it to me. I must admit, he really did sell the club to me. I met the chairman. He was very, very good as well, Doug. I had to ring up Chelsea and Ken Bates and tell him that I was coming to Villa. And Ken Bates said to me, apart from a few expletives, he said, I hope you have 2 nightmares next season. That's Chelsea home and away, and put the phone down on me. So that was
You scored at Chelsea, didn't you?
I think I did as well, yeah. I wouldn't have been celebrating because I didn't want to rub it in, to be honest. But yeah, and then I got injured in pre-season. It was a light, a slight ankle injury. But Big Ron was like, "You've got to play. I've paid all this money for you, and you're and sort of, pushed me along. I was going to play anyway, but he was just more determined for me to get in. And I just gelled with the lads straight away. They were a great bunch to play with, really good side, great attitude. And, we nearly done it that season, but for, probably Blackburn away was the game that, for me, in my head, that's the one that done it for us. But if we'd have, some of the football we played at times was a joy, and beating my old club Liverpool twice was, that was rather nice as well at the time, because you feel aggrieved that you left, and you want to do well and to win, particularly the Ronnie Rosenthal missing, going up there and winning. I think Dino scored, didn't he, when we went up to Anfield? Yeah. It was nice. It was good to win. You still got that mentality that you want to win, and Aston Villa was my club. They were paying my wages, and I was duty bound to do well for them.
What was that dressing room like? Big Ron, obviously a big character. Yeah. You had Stan there, McGrath, Andy Townsend was a big.
No, Andy came later. Andy didn't come that season. He came the next season, I think. Yeah. Andy, but we had Dino. He was funny. Dino's a funny character. Big Dalian, God rest him, was a character. Sid was around at the time at the start. Yeah, Gordon was there, and Gary Parker. So I had Big Paul and Stevie Staunton, who obviously I knew extremely well from Ireland. But then the likes of Gary Parker and people like that started to, they were fun boys, you know what I mean? So any changing room you go into, it's not going to be exactly the same as where you were previously, because they're different characters, different personnel. But as I say, I got on with them great straight away. They were my kind of lads, you know what I mean? Yeah, they enjoyed training. Training was always good. It was always fun. Ron and Jim Barron that used to put on good sessions for us, and we all enjoyed it. I think and when you're playing well as a team, you're looking forward to every game. Training's easy. Training's not hard. Training just gets in the way of the match, if you like. If you know what I mean. You know what I mean. It's just can we play like that again? And when the fans are enjoying it, there's nothing better when the fans are appreciating what you're doing and they're enjoying the football and they want to come to the games, and they can't wait for the next one. That's the sign of a successful side,
Yeah, and you, like you say, you're all close-knit. What was the social meetups like? You go for a drink in the week?
Well, I'll tell you this story. I don't know if I should or not, but I'll tell you anyway.
Go on.
I think it was just before the season was about to start. I think we went into our usual haunt and had a drink. So there was a few of the lads, and there was about 6 or 7 of the lads in there. And they had, having a pint. We weren't playing the next Saturday, so we weren't doing anything wrong. So it was Sunday night, we were in there having a drink. And I had a pint of lager, and then I didn't really like it, so I thought I'll have a Bacardi and Coke. You know what I mean? Just because I didn't want any more beer, so I had a Bacardi and Coke. And the chairman came in, so Doug comes in. So there's all the boys standing there with pints, and there's me. It looks like I've got a Coke, and he turns round and he says, "See you lot, look, see how professional he is. Look, coming in from Liverpool, all you lot on the pints, and there he is on a Coca-Cola." Well, the lads are laughing their head off, and I'm going, "Yes, Mr. Chairman, you're absolutely right. That's the way it should be done." But that sort of set the tone. You know, they were all, as I say, great lads. Yorkie, Bozzy, Spinksy, you know, Kev Richardson was a great captain. You know, I couldn't speak highly enough of them. You know, they were really good lads, and they were determined to have a bit of success. And you know, we gave it a real good go. I mean, that was a big regret, you know, not winning it that season. You know, for the football that we played. You know what I mean?
You scored against Man City 3-0. Villa flying, 1 point off United with 3 games to go, and that Blackburn game, like you say, I mean, just deflation. Lost the last 3, didn't know. What was the mood like then? I was Big Ron.
Oh no, Big Ron went nuts when we lost to Oldham. Yeah, not necessarily after the game, but we came. He made us come in training the next day, and he ran the legs off us.
Did he?
Yeah, round the training pitch, and a few of the lads wanted to have a little chirp about what was going on, but I sort of said, "Look, you know, just take it on the chin, lads. It is what it is. He's upset. He doesn't know, you know, doesn't want to have a go at us, you know what I mean, because he knows how much, you know, that we're put in. So a wee bit of running's not going to be too harsh for us. No. But then the running got more and more severe, and I'm thinking this is not quite right. But listen, it was what it was. Ron was brilliant. He was brilliant for me, brilliant for the lads. You know, he had a fantastic sense of humour. He made you feel like you could win any game, and he didn't like losing. And you know, show me someone who likes losing, and I'll show you your loser. I didn't come from a background, you know, as you say. I think I played in 7 semi-finals in 10 years for 4 different clubs. I didn't like losing. I didn't want to be associated with losers. You know, to me, you come second, you've come nowhere. You need to win it. You know, I wanted winners around me. I wanted people who had that attitude, and I think that was what Ron wanted as well. So, you know, from my point of view, that was the sort of manager I wanted.
Yeah, and obviously, later, it was the League Cup success. Obviously, unused sub. I mean, you scored at Tottenham in the quarters.
Well, I played in every game.
Yeah,
that was annoying. I played in every game up to the final, and then he changed his mind and changed the team. I was fuming, I must admit. You know what I mean? I'm not going to stick there and lie. Gary Parker and I had been sort of bombed out the side en route between the semi-final, and I don't think Gary played, but I certainly had. I can't remember what the team was in the semi-final. And then he changed it around, and he didn't tell me. You know, he just we went to Bishop Abbey, I think it was, or down to train before the game, and he just done an 11 sort of thing, and I wasn't in that 11, and that was how I sort of knew I wasn't playing. And it wasn't till we went on a walk the next morning, the morning of the game, I think it was, and he said, "I'm not playing you. I'm putting you on the bench." And it was as very as matter of fact as that. There wasn't a lot of discussion about it. It wasn't me saying, "Well, I think you're doing the wrong thing," or "I think I should be playing." That was his decision. He's going to stand by it. And by the way, it worked. You know what I mean? They went and won, you know, we went and won the game. But yeah, it was tough though. You're playing every game and then being left out for the final.
Yeah, Graham Fenton coming, wasn't it? I think he played daily. Yeah. He
played on my position, where I would have played. Graham played there and done very well. Yeah. You know, he's a fit lad, strong in the challenge. You know, put himself about, and you know, hands up, Ron got it right. You know, I've got no comeback at all. You know, Ron picked a team that he thought was right for him, that we should win on the day, and he got his tactics absolutely right. So I've got no complaints at all.
That's fair play. Was you able to enjoy the atmosphere after winning it, or it's not the same, is it, when you don't play?
No, I didn't know. I didn't know. I didn't feel I was part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and listen, I had that when I was at Palace, you know, when we got promoted through the playoff final. You know, I'd played in the majority of the games, got left out for the final there, and we beat Sheffield United 1-0. You know, you're promoted to the Premier League, but I didn't feel part of it. You know, even though I was captain all year, if you like. You know what I mean? I was that person, or the club captain. But you don't feel part of it. You know, you feel like you're on the sidelines. Delighted for the boys, you know what I mean? Because I'd seen how hard they'd worked, you know what I mean, and everything that they'd done to get to the final and then go out and beat a very good Man United. A Man United side who'd been playing a load of the youngsters and, you know, all the others in games. And then they got to the semi-final, final, and all of a sudden they started playing out their strongest team, you know, because they wanted to win it. But on the day, tactically, Ron got it right and the boys played really well. Couldn't have been happier for them, you know, and... You know, I couldn't be happy for Ron, you know, because he got it right. But just for me personally, it didn't feel that I was part of it.
Oh yeah, you had the World Cup then as well. It was at the World Cup in '94, the summer.
Yeah.
It was a big one for you, wasn't it? Obviously, the Italy winner.
I mean, I was thankful because I got myself really fit and went to the tournament, and everything just worked out for me that way. I played in every game, you know. I came off against Italy, but that was the only time, you know, the other matches, the other two group stages, and then the loss to Holland, I played in every minute, you know, so I felt fit, felt good, and I was looking forward to coming back and starting a new season with Villa.
That's it, and then obviously Ron got the boot, didn't he, in the November, and Brian Little came in, and how was your relationship with Brian?
It was the first, I've got to be honest with you, I speak how I find, you know, Brian was a club legend, you know, for everything that he'd done, but it was the first time where, as I said to you with Big Ron before, Ron was a winner and he spoke like a winner. Brian didn't come across that way to me, you know, because I'd been with Dalglish and others, you know what I mean? And I'd seen firsthand what people who wanted to win, what they were like. And Brian was very much in the mode of don't upset your teammates, don't do this, don't do that, you know. It wasn't me, to be honest. You know, if someone does something wrong, you've got to tell them. And you tell them not in a way that, you know, that puts them down. You tell them in a way that helps them. You know, that happened. What you got to try and do is do this to make sure it doesn't happen again. If you don't tell them, they'll keep making the same mistakes. So I found it very strange when Brian was saying, "Oh no, don't shout at each other. I don't like it." And for me, it was never going to work with Brian, and either way was. Yeah, because I'd come from a different background. I'd come from a different time, and maybe he was the new. You know, he'd seen where football was going. You know, and how it was going to go in future years as well, because you don't see that as often now. You don't see players, you know, telling each other off or, you know, cajoling or, you know, everything's high fives and, you know, fist bumps every 2 minutes, which, you know, I just don't get. You know, fist pump, if you've scored a goal or if you've, you know, made a great block or something, but if you've done something wrong, you know, you don't fist bump each other. You try and help each other. You try and say, look, this is what you should be doing. And I'll still maintain that's the better way to go about it.
Yeah, obviously, he was building a younger side, wasn't he? A younger team came in and he was doing his own stuff, Brian. And then Palace came about, didn't it, in '95? And did you know Villa career was on its way to an end? Did you know?
Yeah, well, I knew with Brian in charge, as I say, the mix wasn't there. You know, there wasn't, you know, I wasn't feeding off him. He wasn't feeding off me like Ron and I would be. You know, I mean, you can sense when a manager's likes you or when things are going well, you know, there's a definite feeling about it. With Brian, I didn't get that. You know, Greg's was good, John Gregory. I like John. You know, I got on well with John. But I just felt that dynamic with the boys in charge. There was no like oomph. That's how I felt about it. There was no oomph about it. And as I say, maybe I was just an old player coming to the end, and they were the new breed and knew how to talk to the younger generation. But it was just a different time, you know, it was just a changeover, if you like. And I knew it was going to be time for me to move on. Went down to Palace. There was no encouragement from Brian for me to stay. If anything, I think it was more encouragement for me to go. You know, I think he was more into, it might be best all round if you go. And, you know, you get that feeling, and I don't want to be at a club where I'm not wanted, you know, that's for sure. But I was gutted because, you know, great lads, fans were brilliant. I really enjoyed my time there. Wish I went there when I was a little bit younger, you know, that's all. Yeah. You know, you're at the later stages of your career. maybe you're not quite what you once were, sort of thing. But I think my first year I'd done well. Second year not so bad, and third year, different manager, different things. It doesn't quite go your way,
Yeah. Well, what was the experience of Villa Park, the old Houghton as well?
Lovely.
What was that like?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, listen, there's iconic stadiums, isn't there? And ones that you like coming to play in, and I would say every Villa player should enjoy coming out at Villa Park. And when the whole end was in full cry, when things were going well, it was a great scene. They loved their football, and even now, I go back to games, and I walk from the train station to the ground, and and I just listen to the fans talking, and the passion's still there. The love of the club's still there. That will never change. And who they think should be in the team, who's playing well. Well, he's not been quite at it. I don't know what's wrong with him. It's just brilliant. That's what football's about to me. It's about fans having their favourites, and coming to watch their team, and even when things don't go well, you support your team because it's your team. That's your team. They represent you. They represent your area, and that's how I see it when I watch football.
What about some of the funniest memories, Ray? You had a big dressing room, like you said, big characters. You mentioned about the coke stuff as well. I mean, what was the chairman like? Doug Ellis. I've had loads of stories of Doug.
Doug kept himself as much as Doug could. As far as it was a bit different because Ron run it. Yeah, he run. The way it was going. So there wasn't much room for Doug. I think Doug would love to have been part of that because I think he liked being around the players. He liked to, he'd like to mingle with them, talk to them, see how their families were. He'd always try to give you advice, about anything and everything, if you know what I mean. Whereas he couldn't, because he couldn't get down to the training ground often enough because, Big Ron was in charge. But Ron was, as I say, was great. A few run-ins, we on the pitch. I remember one game where I was having a nightmare. It didn't matter what I was doing, it was going wrong, and all I could hear from the bench was "Riser, Riser," and it was Ron shouting at me. And in the end, I told him to go and do one, but in probably stronger terms than that, which I couldn't put out on this podcast. And after the game, he didn't say nothing to me because like anything, I just you forget about it. You see, he said something, I've said something. And to me, that's it. It's gone. And I came in Monday morning, and one of the young apprentices said the gaffer wants to see it, and still I couldn't remember what it was about. And he was in his manager's office with a mug of tea and a sandwich, and he was in his dressing gown. And I came in, and he pulled me over the table, and he went, "Don't you ever talk to me like that again." And then it all came flooding back, and I said, I said, "Look, first of all, Ron, I apologise. I shouldn't have said what I said." I said, "But can I just say something in my defence?" He says, "What's that?" I said, "Look, I'm having a nightmare. 40,000 of my home supporters are telling me I'm having a nightmare." I said, "Do you think you shouting at me is going to make me play any better?" And he went, fair point. He says, "But don't ever call me them names again." I said, "All right then, off you pop." And I went out. So that was Ron, that would be what he was like. He was fair. He didn't make a big deal of it after the game in front of the lads. He made it private between me and him, how it should be, because it was him and I had the little spat. But he handled it in such a grown-up way and in a funny way, which would be typical of Big Ron.
I could picture you now in his dressing gown, like you said.
Yeah, we'd have, like before the season started, we would have a dinner party, or a garden party, should I say, at his, and there'd be the champagne bottles out with the Ron Atkinson label on it, And I remember one occasion there was a few of the lads that were chatting to Big Ron, and I think Sean Teal wanted to get involved in the chat, and as he went to walk over, Ron said to him, "Not now, Sean." He says, "I'm off the back tees with the big hitters." And Tilly walked away, and said he walked through and said, "Shut up, I'm coming over." Tilly just walked away, which is one of the funniest things I've seen. But we just one of Ron's great one-liners, you know what I mean? He had a line for anything and everything at the right time. I just loved him. I thought he was a great manager, and he's just so funny.
What about the dressing room pranks, Ray? And Dino was a character, wasn't he? He loved to play up, and Daly.
Yeah, I think it was a few. I mean, then when Andy came in, Towner was the joker as well. Towner was a joker. He was great for all that. And you need that. You can't have 30 lads all the same. You know what I mean? And then you would have Daly would always have his stories, all the stuff that he's been up to. You know what I mean? because he was a young, unmarried lad. You know what I mean? He would have plenty of stories what he'd been doing and that. So, you know, you would always be entertained. You know, and then we had a great physio, Jim Walker. Jim was unbelievable for us. You know, he looked after all of us and made sure that everyone, you know, was fit and healthy and in the best, you know, form that they could be. So I loved it. We used to have great 2v2s, you know, in the gym, little head tennis, 1v1s. So little things like that. And table tennis. We had a table tennis thing, which I loved table tennis, you know what I mean? But there was one or two others who I think were county standard. So you come in there and they would be doing all the spins and all that, and you know, you're getting your bat on, and next minute it would be going either end of the room because you couldn't control it. But it was great. We used to do that in the morning before training. You know, you get you active, got you lively, got you chatting. You know, so yeah, you know, great memories. And listen, you're talking about 92, 93. You know, so you're talking a long time ago, but I can still remember it. You know, vividly. Everything that we got up to, or even I think we played Tottenham one night and down at White Hart Lane, and things weren't going well, and Ron decided to have a karaoke a couple of nights before the game.
Brilliant.
And I got up for, I can't sing, I know it, I am useless, but no one else wanted to do it, so I got up and sung Delilah. And a few of the other boys got up and sang, and we went out and we beat Spurs in the League Cup a couple of nights later. I think it was. I think I scored and El Barrett scored. Little things like that. You know, Ron knew we were on a bit of a low. We needed picking up, and his way was like, let's have a little karaoke and let's get it going. And well, Ron sung about 25 songs, and we sung about 3.
Paul McGrath, we don't hear from him lately, but absolute club legend. You know him better than most. I mean, what was he like?
He was unbelievable. I mean, how good could he have been if he could have trained? You know, I mean, we would probably on a Friday morning we'd go out and do set pieces, you know, for and against. Yeah. And Paul would come out with his trainers on, you know, and walk through them. You know, Ron would say, right, we're going to walk through the corners and the free kicks because Big Paul couldn't run. And then he'd go out on the Saturday and man of the match, Paul McGrath. You know, so he was a phenomenon, a one-off, because. And the reality is, I mean, his career should have been over when he was fairly young with the injuries that he had. But such was his mentality, you know, that he wanted to keep playing. And I think the manager at Derby at the time said, if I had £1 million, he said, I'd rather buy Paul McGrath a new pair of legs than bring in a player. He said, because he's that good. He said, he's just a phenomenon. And for Ireland, he was an absolute legend. You know, you could play Paul centre back, right back, centre midfield. It wouldn't matter. You know, he just knew positionally where he should be. He was an aggressive player. I think Ronnie Whelan told a great story when he said, I think they played Man United, and I think Rushy scored for the first time against Man United, and he says, where's that Paul McGrath? But he never scored against Paul for Man United. And Ronnie said, he's been Aston Villa for the last 3 years. He's like, he said, I wanted to give it to him. He said, all this time I've been waiting to score against him. He says, and I've never scored. And here I've scored and he's not even here. So it just shows you, even someone like Rushy knew how good he was, you know, as a player. He's just technically good at everything. Headed it well, you know, could play out from the back. The little flicks he used to do. But it was his time, and his timing was impeccable. If you looked at, you know, clearances, challenges, you know, going in to make tackles, everything was just on the money, you know, and he, quite rightly, is a legend wherever he's been. Man U, you know, Aston Villa and Away Island.
And a bloke as well, one of the best, isn't it?
Yeah. Two types though. When he had a drink, he was a different person, you know, unfortunately. When he hadn't, he was the most amiable fella you'll ever come across, the most polite fella you'll ever come across, you know. Butter wouldn't melt in his mouth. He was that good. No, he was absolutely incredible. He was a lovely fella. But you know, we all know what happens when you drink too much or whatever. You know, it can affect you. But I can't speak highly enough of him. You know, I was there when he won the Player of the Year. I went down. I think it was certainly Gary Parker, myself, and him. I can't remember if Rickle came or Steve Staunton when he went down, and it was all the ones who'd won the Player of the Year and been invited along. And we went down to support him, and all the others had won it before him were there as well. And to be in that elite group, and that is what it is. It's an elite group when you become the PFA Player of the Year. You've been the best player as voted by your peers, and you don't get much higher than that. With all due respect, and to be there with him when he was down there for that was a lovely evening as well.
Yeah, fabulous memories, Ray. What do you make of the current Villa crop then?
Been delighted for Dean. Delighted the way that it's gone. When you think we're one game away from relegation, that's pressure. And then to come out the following season and to do what they did is remarkable. A great turnaround. Every time I watched them, they always looked a well-drilled team, good, well-organised. Everyone knows their job. You've got your star man in Jack. He plays. They're a different team. There's no doubt. But I think like with McGinn and the others that are in the side, you can sense that there's a real camaraderie. There's a real great team ethic. They all work hard for each other. I wouldn't imagine yet he has too many problems on the training ground. They all look like they want to be successful. All want to work hard. Funny enough, I was looking to see who he's bringing in, and I didn't see any big names, which I was a little bit surprised at. I thought he might just try and bring in one or two, because every year you want to improve on what you had the year before. Yeah, and I just thought there might be one or two big names coming in just to move the club forward a little bit more and make them even more of a prospect for the upcoming season.
Yeah, I mean, Spencer, club record on Emi Buendia, Norwich.
From Norwich, yeah.
What do you make of Jack's situation?
He's a Villa man through and through. He's been there as a boy, isn't he? And it's his club. And you're loath to move on, but, at what stage do you think you want to test yourself a little bit higher? And that's nothing against Villa. It's just that they're not in the top four, and the clubs that are looking at him are, and as a player, you're always looking to play at the very highest, play at the very best. And, when you finish your career, you can have as much money as you want, but you want the memories. Yeah. You want the cup finals. You want the league titles. You want. Well, he's got it with England at the minute. He's going to be involved in the semi-finals of the European Championships. But a taste of that will want him to. He'll probably want to spur him on to do more. So it'll be interesting to see what happens and what he does next. But if they were to lose him, it would be huge, because he's been in the talisman for the last 2-3 seasons. He's actually grown as a player, in my opinion. I think 3 years ago, he was still someone who I looked at and, he was a prospect. He had ability, but he didn't do it often enough. He didn't take charge of games often enough. But you couldn't say that in the last 2-3 seasons. He's been absolutely fabulous. He's got to another level. He's got to another level as a human being as well on the pitch. He's taken his game to another level, and that's why there's so many people courting him at the minute. Who want to take him on.
Yeah, coming into his prime. Well, then, right, I'll end up there, mate. Really appreciate your time. Fantastic memories there from Castlemilk to Stories a Big Run. Hilarious, mate, and been brilliant to catch up. So can't thank you enough for your time, Ray, and we'll catch up soon, mate. Is that all right?
Okay, Ashley, all the very best. And just to all the Villa fans, thanks for the memories. Absolutely 3 wonderful years at the club. And it's only when you finish and you look back and you reflect and you just realise how lucky and fortunate you were playing for a massive club like Aston Villa. And just to Dean and all the boys, and also the supporters, keep getting behind the squad and enjoy next season. Let's hope it's even better than it was last season.
Thank you for listening to Claret Blue and Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.